So, all right, komatsotso.
Not popping up just yet. Okay, you're live down and
Matsotso, maulika, unhuhumutsu, oopan. Can you hear me?
okay.
Ipa. All right, half a day todo samzugwena hudzung. It is an episode, un nuevo na episode Fanachu. We are almost to Mes tomorrow. Next month, we officially start Mes tomorrow, Guinea-Gidzaguahan. But before we get to Mes tomorrow, and I think I want to quote I want to paraphrase Senator Chris Malafunction Barnett, who's always talking about how Mes tomorrow, talking about messes on Mes tomorrow. Let's talk about sort of a historical mess here in Micronesia. Let's talk about nuclear testing, U.S. nuclear testing in Micronesia. This is something where if you pay attention, then you know about how the Marshall Islands have been dramatically affected by this, but you may not know how the rest of Micronesia and Guam has been affected by this issue as well. There have been activists, there have been community members who have been pushing to educate us and have been pushing for compensation and recognition on this issue for decades now. And so one of the main groups that has been pushing for recognition and inclusion in federal compensation around exposure because of the nuclear testing in the Marshall Islands. One of the main groups is PARS, Pacific Association for Radiation Survivors. And I'm very excited that we have with us for this episode of Fanachu, Senor Robert Celestial, Senor Robert Natmaulik Celestial Hongan, and he will be with us here today talking about some updates because this has been years, it's almost been decades at this point that sort of Senor Hagu, you have been pushing for this, and this is something that is not simply a political issue for you. It is something that is a personal issue as a Chamorro, as a veteran, as somebody who cares for this community. And so, Sidus Masi, Senor, por ifinatopmo para este Fanachu podcast, Sidus Masi.
After the buenas guau si Robert Namulik Celestial, Sidus Masi na un camilo pago. Bina like half an information para the radiation matatsi Total Guam in a tempo from 1946 to 1962. Ungan manahatuk todos the information ni Department of Defense, ni Department of Energy, lo it's in a tempo 1996 ma-declassify todos the documento. Zan uno na tao si Lieutenant Bert Schreiber, It's 1952. He was the radiological, biological, and officer here in Guam during that time, and he was under Q clearance. Q clearance was top secret clearance from the Department of Energy. And like nus todo na ungan matatsi tao Guam zinatempo manapakpak it's the first hydrogen bomb in the Marshall Islands. Peso Guam na o organ peso sa facing cosinya anayid often information cosinya sa was is in a temple niya tisinya say was under acute clearance. Lo usangani naman classified. Lo Lieutenant Bert Schreiber mali na tao sa organ ni Department of Navy and Department of Defense. Pes masangani hunggan sinya na like no story information. Pes it's in a nakata it's in a you would notarize kata. Pes makan bida jo be testifying the National Academies of Sciences in front of the scientists in Washington, D.C. in 2004. So, given in 2001, Taza Guinea is a slata Guam na mga law legislatura and tauta I Kongreso ti mahonggyo. Masama ni todo na mga mahonggis ti tauta sa lahat si, ti sinya matsogizi, hafu sosoni I Estados Unidos. Pero nangga Fanachu news duro laknos gi radio na ungan istri dokumento ungan na malong todo tauta prestina kosa sa manapakpak na 67 nuclear bombs lo timasamami is in a tempo lo ungan manmamala todo jiboneno na yes 2004 Kongreso malagnos talo otro na line because it's in a line ni National Academy of Science kusinya kusinya an investigate talo na Odzi talo sinya manaholon pagdating na programa like Radiation Exposure Compensation Act sa mapasa in line 1990 pues manuzo zanu testify for the National Academy of Science na hamzo expert ko sina unsbier ko hunggan ko magard istina information by ngayam zo pues ma-publish iti libro pues masalani iti page 200 masalani na ay mapego papa linya hunggan the residents of Guam during that time period should be included in the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, that the residents of Guam were exposed to nuclear fallout at that time. So now it wasn't just Robert Celestio talking about nuclear fallout. So in 2005, 2006, then the government of Guam and all the leaders started jumping on board saying, okay, let's see what we could do for the people of Guam. So after that, but before that, we formed the Pacific Association of Radiation Survivors. And only by the grace of God that we were able to go to Washington, D.C. and testify. Because then we got invited again to testify before the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. And that was a miracle because it was only by working with other states, counties, like New Mexico, Idaho, Utah, Navajo Nation, that we were able to get an invitation from Senator Crapo from Idaho. That's how I got invited. So then we testified before the Judiciary Committee, I believe in 2018. The bills got passed, but never got out of the House for some reason. Even last year, Senator Hawley from Missouri introduced Senate bills for RICA. Guam's always been in the bill. And so what happened is that it got passed out of the Senate twice, but the Speaker Johnson wouldn't put it on the floor for a vote to get it out. And hopefully it was, it could have got passed, but we never get it out of the House. And so our bill died. And so now Senator Hawley from Missouri has introduced a new bill last month. And right now and today, we're still waiting for a House bill. Congressman Goldsar from Arizona, he introduced a bill, but it's a limited bill only for their counties in certain states. So we're hoping and praying that Senator Hawley's bill from the Senate will get passed again, and hopefully another bill in the House would get introduced, and hopefully we'll get it passed. And the omnibus bill, which was supposed to be passed this month, but I guess it's moved over to April. So that's where we're at today on our movement for PARS.
Wow. Senor, Sangani zu put for board Sidus Masi, Malago to the bed, Sangani Hamzu, Gipars, Sidus Masi put Torres Sahutumunai, na Makat, Esti Kilus Mizunai, Makat Esti. No, Taimano na matuto nesti ikinalamte mizugi pars. How did it first get started? Like Hamzuds and Otrotauta, man veterans Hamzu, man activists. Taimano na si Bert Shriver, Finatonia, or how did it? What was the genesis?
Okay, Finatonia, 1998, who's pipina put Guam. I was stationed in the Marshall Islands to clean up the nuclear waste. And so I was just data mining, and I found out that they had a website called the HRX, the Radiation Experiments, Human Radiation Experiments Advisory Committee that was declassified in 1994. So they had this website, and I started researching for 2 years, looking for Inuit cleanup veterans or others, los swerte na uli na un documento like in Guam and say, hey, obviously, what are we doing in here? So from that day on, I started doing more research. And so I compiled a whole bunch of documents and testimonies from Bert Schreiber. And I wrote a 4-page report to the governor, to the legislature, 4-page report saying radiation fallout Guam. And so that's how it started. And so what had happened is that the late Dr. Chris Paris and Dr. Youngberg were interested in my research. So we worked together. We formed just the three of us. But then when I got invited to go before the National Academies of Science, we went up to the airport, and they had this cancer group. So the cancer group, Dr. Paris, the introduction, Faisen is the group, no definite na saloni na audio na often malago. So half of the group wanted to participate in the movement of what I was doing. And so we formed the Pacific Association of Radiation Survivors. That's when we filed, our nonprofit documents to whatever we needed over tax and revenue and stuff like that. And so from then, I believe, and I want to give a lot of credit to the late Gloria Nelson. It was her that actually took us up to Cliff Hotel, and we did a little fundraiser that I wasn't even familiar what a fundraiser was. But believe it or not, our little group went up to the Cliff Hotel, and they had bingo. And so Gloria took the mic and started saying this and this, we're going to support, PARS, and we're going to send Mr. Celestial to Washington, D.C., and she brought a pig, she brought a blonde pig, and she raffled out the blonde pig. And so I said, wow, what's going on? So people were donating money, to get us to go to Washington, D.C. But every time somebody would win the blonde pig, they donated it back. So nobody ever won the blonde pig. So we continue to move on. So that's how it basically started. And so with our little group of cancer survivors and their family, so that's what we started with. And then as we grew, and it was until the book was published in 2005, then we had a general membership meeting, and that's when people started hearing, what we were doing. If you were here on Guam from 46 to 62, then it affected them. And then I started explaining, that if you're on Guam during that time period, you may qualify. And so that's how we basically started. And from our first group, we've lost majority of our first group over the 20 years. And so every time we had a general membership, we had new members come in, and we've been really, really blessed. And so we continue to move this forward because it's the right thing to do. But this year, we're hoping and praying that we get it, out of the Senate, out of the House, and hopefully President Trump will, agree and sign it, even though he's doing all kinds of things with, the nuclear weapons there. He wants to, I don't know if he wants to either rebuild it or.
Okay. He seems to be saying both at the same time.
Right.
He wants to rebuild it, but he also wants to decrease it. And so.
It's confusing. It's
Okay.
confusing, and especially with all the federal cutbacks.
Mhm.
And he's talking about billions of dollars that were wasted. And so first, I think we got to first follow Senator Hawley's bill and get it out of the Senate. And hopefully we'll get another bill in the House.
Mm.
And so I've been hoping and waiting for Congressman Moylan to give us an update, because last year he introduced an amendment to try and get it into the National Defense Authorization Act. And it didn't go through, but it hopefully, because right now, there were some states, I mean, yeah, some states and some counties from Missouri that was omitted, meaning that they forgot to put them in the bill, and we're hoping that whatever bill gets into the House can be, we can add these communities and these other states into the bill. But Guam has always been in the bill because, for the relationship that we have with the frontline community from New Mexico, Idaho, Utah, Navajo Nation, and Missouri. And now with the Union of Concerned Scientists with Lydia Adams working together, we're hopeful. We're hopeful. And so, yeah, you're right. It's been 24 years pushing this issue. And Guam's eligible. It's just that now that Congress needs to act on it. And I believe this Utah Senator Lee is always hesitant, trying to find out how are we going to include all these states and communities, and what are the scientific proofs. And we have the scientific proof. We have the National Academies of Science that back in 2004 recommending Guam to be included because this information was declassified. And so the people of Guam have been suffering for many, many years. And matter of fact, it's gone from generation to generation. It didn't stop in 1962 because the half-life. So if strontium and cesium-137, has a 30-year lifespan. So they're giving us only detonation dates from 46 to 62. That's when it ended in the Marshall Islands. But the exposure here in Guam is 30 years. So from 62 to 30 years, 1992. So everyone within that time period were also exposed. However, Congress would only give us 46 to 62.
Mm. No, Jesus Masi, Senor. We've already got a number of people that are commenting and sending in questions. And first off, I do want to mention that somebody has commented watching on Instagram and said, "Buenas, Senor, you were my army recruiter." And
Oh,
so,
you say, look, si Ramon, igual. Yeah.
and also we have Tony Babauta ni Omega zailek niya si Senori. Like he says, Robert's story about PARS and the organization's continuing effort for Guam's inclusion is a remarkable one. We should all be reminded about it until there's closure on this issue. Sidzus Masi. And then Callan, ihagan,
Dr. Perez.
Dr. Perez hungan, ilek niya Guaidzahaw, Uncle Robert.
Ako masubuko right out.
And so, oh yeah, people are tuning in. We've got people watching on, and so remember, if you have questions, we're collecting them, and we've got some time that we can ask them. We've also got Jay Baza Pasqua. He says, "Hafade, Robert.
Buenas.
Taina Ma'asi Zanzoasi Lokwe for continuing to champion the issue for all these years." He says, "I met you decades ago as a reporter. When I first heard your story, I was saddened and enraged. Then when I heard you were taking up the fight for all of us, I thought to myself, this man is a hero."
Aye.
Aye. Ungan, and so, I want to ask you, Senor, and so you've talked a little bit about how this organization started and what has kept you going, because As you have said, this is a process which it's been an uphill battle, and then you know, there's possibility, and then it doesn't happen. And so you've talked about how you started, but what has kept PARS? What has kept you strong and kept it going for
That-
these 24 years?
That's an easy question to answer. Is the people in parts? Is you know, like the tycoon funds, the late Rosenbergers and the Borjas and even the present members. They're the one that keeps me going, you know, because they're the ones are still alive, the ones who have passed. You know, we had a journey together. And so I always remember every day, you know, their faces, even though they're gone, and how we've, you know, had general membership. We had a lot of good times together. We'd have like a fiesta right there in Timoning Community Center. It's all those, I think it's the journey that really keeps us going. And by the grace of God, I believe the Lord, you know, has given us strength. You know, it's it really never gets me down. I've always been a positive person, you know, especially after what happened when I was in the Marshall Islands cleaning up the nuclear waste, because we weren't really told what we were doing. And so by the grace of God, I got sick. A lot of us got sick. We were affected. Some of us were given a retirement. Some of us were given disability through the VA. And so with my case, I was blessed because I got sick right after I left the Marshall Islands. A lot of people didn't get sick till later, and then they couldn't get benefits because they got out. But being I got through medical board, they gave me a full retirement. And so through the VA, I was blessed. And so I've always felt that if my exposure to the nuclear waste cleanup is no different than the people of Guam who got exposed to the nuclear fallout, and they deserve the same health benefits and compensation that I've been receiving ever since I got out of the military. So that's what keeps me going, is that the people of Guam, a lot of them have not realized what had happened to them and to their families until one day when they passed this bill. Then they could realize the effects. We have a lot of sickness here in Guam, and it's not from food. It's not, you know, I've argued with some medical physicians say, oh, it's our diet. It's not our diet, it's an environmental uh, exposure like Agent Orange and DDTs. And here we've proven it. We went before the National Academies of Science. We had to prove it, and it's been proven. And so it's now up to Congress to, you know, to accept it. Not only Guam, but other states in the Navajo Nation, uranium miners, and those people were affected in Missouri who had a nuclear waste buried in their backyard. And so, yeah, that's what keeps me going. It's the people in PARS, you know, and always checking up on some of them, and they're the ones keep me going, you know, because they're going through a lot. And some of them, you know, still going through cancer treatment, you know, through chemo and stuff. And it's hard. And it was an eye opener because when I went to DC in 2023 and I met Senator Hawley and we spoke before the Capitol, you know, and we were what you call it, lobbying for a bill. And when I came back to Guam, they had an accident and I was in dialysis for 5 months. And so I almost died. So I understood. I was in the hospital, Naval Hospital, for months. Every time they had to gird me to the ambulance and gird me out of there, you know, to go to dialysis. And so it had me reflect being in a hospital for that long. And I said, wow, if this is what I'm going through, imagine what the other folks are going through. And so by the grace of God, Dr. Soft, a nephrologist, said, your one kidney's working, so we're going to pull you out. And so I'm a little bit of a miracle is that I've been out of dialysis since last year. And so I'm okay. Yeah. But people, people are going worse, you know. And that's why I believe that the people of Guam really deserve this. You know? And I don't know what, I even think that it's a blessing and a curse that it had for me to go to the Marshall Islands, you know, get exposed to, you know, be on ground zero, for me to find out that the people of Guam were exposed, because if that didn't happen, we still wouldn't know that people were exposed to nuclear fallout. It's sad. Huh? It's really sad.
Um, Situs Masi for sharing and for sharing about your health and gov magov zunay na tumotog yaw or matatatson how giminagayad pa ko lo kumatkwento sa nay zawon kumansisigi how nay giyesti na bonito sa mo. But I do have somebody has asked a question though. Is there anyone who is doing this work or any evidence that the Northern Marianas Islands were also affected in the nuclear testing?
All I know, if I see now is, believe it or not, all week I've been trying to get a hold of Congresswoman Hines to WhatsApp. Left messages on her phone. She WhatsApped me just pronounced Saturday. She said that she's busy with the NGA over there, and I don't know if she's Saipan or Washington DC. So she's supposed to get back to me. To the individual that's asking for the CNMI, this is what happened. Dr. Perez, Dr. Cephas, and I were invited by Congressman or Senator Hopcook back in 2006 or 7. So we went there in Saipan and we testified before their legislature. And we presented our case saying, hey, if you guys wanted to, you know, to participate, you know, you have a chance. So they did. They passed the resolution back then, but nothing ever happened after that. And I gave the bill to Congresswoman Hines just last week. I sent it to WhatsApp that in 2018 we included the CNMI. But what had happened is that after, you know, every 2 years the bill dies. So to answer the individual's questions, yes, we did get the CNMI in 2018. And what had happened then, after the bill died, we had a formal meeting with the legislative directors after the bill died, which jurisdictions should be included in the next bill. So I tried to get a hold of Congressman Kalilis Blon at that time, but got no response. So when in the meeting, they asked me, well, what about CNMI? They're going to still be included. I said, I can't speak for the CNMI. You're going to have to ask the CNMI. That's why they would take it out or not placed back into the bill. So all those years I've been trying to work with the frontline community, the RICO working group, you know, and trying to understand, you know, that we were working together to get other jurisdiction in. And so now it's a good time. If the CNMI wants to get in, it's because Ohio and certain counties in Missouri, that Missouri's in the bill because Senator Hollis introduced it. We had the meeting this morning. They're going to try and put them in the bill. So the CNMI, that window of opportunity is still there. And that's why this week I've been trying my best to get a hold of Congresswoman Hines. And the only response I got from her is she's going to get back to me this week. So I could explain to her and let her understand that radiation fallout don't go in a straight line. You know, is that the whole Marianas Island and the way that the nuclear fallout came in our direction. So, to my understanding, that they should be included. And I tried my best, yeah, but it's up to them. Yeah.
No, c'est doucement, c'est doucement. And so for those of you who are watching, who are from the CNMI, remember, talk to your congresswoman and talk to your leaders because, you know, this is something where if you know, we Tadzabotutanay, Gisan Lago, we don't have any votes, which means that our leaders have to speak. They have to yell. They have to show up.
Lo ingin mandatnya na Congresswoman Hines and si Moylan ingin mandatnya si dos mas met good
Mhm.
must be a good thing. Lo pagwao haga su officer fina tomorrow. Si u Ugokoti is to share his studies and leaders, the downwinders and uranium miners. So we're just holding on to their coattails.
Mm.
So we don't have a vote. We don't have a vote in the, in the House, in the Senate. So if you look at it, we've been blessed because the Senate, through our working over the 20-some years, our organization in Guam is always on the bill, only because of the frontline community and the RICA working group. That by our relationship, they always say, don't forget Guam. I could show you a lot of the emails. Sa Guam na bright, malifa na, malaknus Guam na. But if it's not for Tona Henderson from Idaho or Mary Dixon from, they always put in the email, don't forget Guam, put Guam in there. So, in their op-eds and stuff like that, they'll put Mexico, Idaho, and best Malifam and Timapega, Guam. And then they'll come in and say, don't forget Guam. So I have to hold on to these guys real tight. I mean, I'm not a congressman, I'm not a governor, I'm not a legislature, but we work together. We're hoping and praying that like these guys will work together. And that's where we're at. We're just a nonprofit organization. We're grassroots. And only by, and not only that, I'm a lifetime member of the National Association of Atomic Veterans. I'm an atomic veteran. A lot of people don't know what an atomic veteran is. Go on Google and you find out who we are. And, after 30 years, they finally gave us recognition because we were kept classified too. And so they gave us, believe it or not, they gave us a medal and a certificate. And my wife laughs because I got mine in the mail. And so, it would have been nice if the delegate, could have, at least called me and the other two from Guam, Tonya Fauci and the guy from Guam, said, come in and we'll present you this. We just got it in the mail. It says Department of Defense, Sergeant Celestial, you're now an atomic veteran. They gave you a medal. I said, wow, what is that, man? Yeah. So, we put up with a lot.
And that actually leads me to a question about sort of RICA. And so our focus in terms of understanding this issue is, of course, on the nuclear testing and the Marshall Islands.
Right.
But RICA, you're naming, of course, all of these other places in the United States, all of these other communities, tribal groups, and
Right.
so on. And I think a lot of people in Guam may not even be familiar and wonder, how have these people been exposed to radiation? How are they affected
That's
by
a
this?
good
And so can you talk a little bit about then what is RICA,
Yes.
right? And then how have all of these other places, because I think if you travel around, you'll find places where there's been nuclear testing in the US and nuclear storage. And
Right.
so can you give us a sense about how all these other places are part of this movement too?
Excellent. The Radiation Exposure Compensation Act was enacted in 1990 to compensate Utah, Nevada, and some parts of Utah, Nevada, and Arizona. So different communities were affected, were identified and included to be compensated. And also, it's called the EEOI CPA. It's the Energy Employment Individual Occupational Compensation Act, that these people who worked in the nuclear plants were compensated through this program. And in Arizona, Nevada, and Utah, it's because of the detonations in Nevada that was conducted back then, and in New Mexico. And it's strange because New Mexico was never included in that first program, and New Mexico is with us in this bill to try and get included to be compensated. So they compensated these three states with health benefits and with $150,000, and they were acknowledged. And so what had happened is that when they declassified this information in 1994 from the human radiation experiments, you could go on Google and look it up. Then a lot of states and counties, and especially with the Oppenheimer issue with the Manhattan Project, then other states found out that they needed to be included, such as Guam. That's how I found, it was called the BRER Committee. It's the Board of Radiation Effects Research Committee that was established by the National Research Council to go out and find out what other geographical areas to include in this program that was enacted in 1990. Right, so by working, I found all these folks in the States. So we built a relationship over the 20 years. And that's how Idaho is, let me see, Idaho, New Mexico, Colorado, the remaining states are considered downwinders. And then some other states are considered to be uranium miners, because the Navajo Nation, Pueblo Nation, where they mined the uranium for the nuclear weapons. So that's how they're included into the bill. And then you have Missouri, which during the Manhattan Project, they took all the nuclear waste and buried it in their property and didn't notify anybody. And so they found out. And so that's how we built a coalition.
Mm. No, thank you. It's that's very, very helpful in understanding. I mean, I in helping us understand how this is so much more far-reaching,
Yes,
because I think the impact of these nuclear weapons, people often think of it just as the bomb itself or even the test itself, but this shows that from the extraction to the manufacture to the
Correct.
storage to the testing, all of it
yes,
has contaminating and harmful impacts, and that communities have bear the scars and bear the wounds.
well, and then they realized that, especially with me, and it was, that's why I said it was a blessing and a curse, because if I wasn't stationed in the Marshall Islands and got sick, I wouldn't know anything about what had happened to the people of Guam. So the same thing would have happened with, if it wasn't for Oppenheimer, Manhattan Project that just came out, then the people in Missouri and Ohio and all these other states that came in later, they wouldn't, come out and say, hey, let's, they're doing something over here. We need to do something also. And so we band together and we're hopefully working together to get this bill passed. Yeah. And so I really want the senior Mike to get included. And all she has to do is just ask Congressman Moylan, to work together and get them in the bill.
Oh, Viva. Since Masi Senor. And so we do have a few questions.
Sure.
And so without naming any names, because I know that your work, you have to work with a lot of people on different sides of the aisle and different political parties, locally and nationally. But have you found that local leaders here in Guam, have they been very supportive of your efforts, or have you had to convince a lot of our own leaders about this work? Have you found that it was difficult at the beginning and it's easier now? What has been your assessment, or in terms of the work that you've been doing? Have you had to convince a lot of our own people?
I really think, let me see, there's a lot of, in the beginning it was like Ben Pangilinan and Angel Santos, the late Senator Angel Santos, the late Ben Pangilinan, Senator, Speaker Pinko, and then it was Speaker Terlahi, which today, supports us 100%, Chris Melafunction, and and also the Republicans supports us very much. And so it took a while. It's not basically convincing them. They're convinced. It's just that are they willing to support us? Everybody I found out over the years is if it's not their agenda, I'm speaking frankly, if it's not their agenda, usually they don't want to get involved. But a lot of them do understand now that their families have been affected. And that's why I believe that it's getting stronger today, is that they have a relative or a family that have been affected, going through chemotherapy, going through, certain medical issues, that then they realize that, yes, we have to get involved. And so it's the issue wasn't trying to convince them, is that the issues that are they willing to help, and only a few were willing to help. And so that's why today I'm hoping and praying that, they just need to work together. That's all. I mean, we're doing the best we can as a nonprofit organization, as grassroots, as working together with those in the States. And so, and the grace of God. I like to tell the story, why is it taking so long? And if you remember the story about Moses, you remember they took the people out of Egypt. They were supposed to go to the promised land, take them a couple of weeks, but it took them how many years? It took them 40 years. Why? Because of unbelief. And it's 25 years now. I mean, because why? We had unbelief. Our government didn't believe for a long time. And still, sometimes I wonder if they still believe, because a lot of times, you have issues in the States and you say, oh man, we'll never get it done because of this, because of that. But that doesn't deter us from stopping from what we're doing. Just got to keep moving and convincing, say, hey, you guys are convinced, but are you willing? Is Congress willing to pass the bill? Senator Hawley from Missouri is willing. Is Mike Johnson from being the Speaker, is he willing? Is Moylan willing? Is Delegate Hines willing to put her people into the bill? I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're just blessed. Believe it or not, we are blessed that the Senate side adopted Guam. If you think about it, it was the Senate side that adopted Guam to put us where we are today. And so, yeah.
It's actually moving ahead on this topic, though. I want to ask about National Day of Remembrance for Downwinders, because the Guam legislature
27th of January.
That's right. And recently the Guam legislature in Guam, Senator Terlahi and other senators,
That was beautiful.
they passed a resolution honoring PARS, and sort of you and the organization and the work that you've done. And so I'm sharing with those who are watching some of the pictures of it. And so can you talk to us about what is the National Day of Remembrance, and then what it was like sort of to have everybody gathered there and to get this resolution honoring your work?
Well, it's not my work, it's our work, I mean, what had happened is that the Senate decided to introduce a resolution, and it gave January 27th a day of remembrance for Downwinders Day, meaning those that were exposed to nuclear weapons testings that were downwind. And we consider ourselves downwind. The National Academies of Science consider us downwind. And hopefully, Congress will recognize us as downwinders. And so the other states were commemorated, like New Mexico and Idaho and the rest. So they did the same thing the next day, because we did it, we're always a day ahead. So I want to thank all the senators that did support us, and for especially those that came out. and a lot of my members couldn't make it, because they're going to treatment and other stuff. But we appreciate it because it continues to keep the issue alive. To do a day of remembrance, to bring out a resolution like that, it just continues the movement of what we're trying to do and get the bill passed. And people who are not aware, then they ask questions like they're asking now, and then they become aware. And then said, how does this affect my family? My mom died, my dad died of cancer years ago. Does it affect them? Said yes, because if according to the regulation and is that if let's say from 1946, 62, if an individual passed away, but we're here in Guam at that time and had the cancer, one of the compensable diseases, then either the spouse, the children, or the grandchildren can apply for that compensation. So yes, it does make a difference. So hopefully it'll pass the bill. And a lot of people say, oh, it doesn't affect me, but did your grandmother, did your mother, or your brother passed away? Did you have the compensable disease? You may be eligible to receive the compensation. Yeah.
C'est just masing. C'est just masing. And so, Senor, we are just about out of time for this episode. And so I wanted to give you just a chance. We got about 5 more minutes.
Oh, wow, that's a lot.
And so I wanted to give you a chance to share any final thoughts that you have. And, what you were sharing there at the end, I think, about one of the reasons why the resolution was important, importante na naman, dadanya hamzuds, man ma-oonra, man ma-recogninisa, so it's important so that kosaki i man lahoban sinya malii esti sinya makomprendi.
Right.
I safanay, bali na, ibidan miminso, next generations, right?
Right.
And so one of the things that I think might be good is, what would you say for the next generations? Because you've been in this for decades now, for your own personal advocacy, for your own rights as an atomic veteran. You've been in it fighting for the rights of Chamorros to get just compensation and recognition. And so do you have anything to say then for the next generation, which needs to get ready to take up, to get educated on these issues and to take it up next?
I gave presentations, I believe, a couple of times at University of Guam. And for the younger generation, it shocks them. Yeah, I've learned that the information was new to them. And I found out that by presenting this issue to the younger generation brings a very personal and heartfelt towards the information is shocking, because then they think about their mother or the brother that's going through cancer treatment, and they said, well, why isn't our government doing more, to help them, and then finally realizing what had happened to our people here in Guam. And so when I presented this issue to the students in the University of Guam, I was shocked that they were affected this way. They would cry. I said, why are they crying? They said, because their mom is going through cancer treatment, their brother and stuff like that. And then it hurt them because to find out that they were exposed to nuclear fallout and nobody told them. And what is our government? And then I said, our government is doing, this is what the program's about. And that's why I'm educating you guys, bringing this information. So they suggested I go to the elementary and junior high. I said, I don't think this is an information that you will bring to a younger generation, because then you're probably scared the hell out of all of them. If this is what it is with the university students, I don't think I want to bring this information to a younger generation. So we are blessed, PAR's blessed to have a few younger generation. They will take up the mantle after I'm gone. You know, I want to thank Rosario. She's our secretary. We had Connie and Michaela, the younger generation. They're really great support. It blesses me to know that some younger generation, you know, have an interest because, you know, they have a good heart. And so that's what we need. You're right. We do need the younger generation. Now, your generation, I mean, sometimes I think I'm young, you know, but you can, I was asking how young you get. I said, wow, I have kids older than you guys, you know? And I said, oh my God, I'm that old. So yes, we do need the younger generation. And you are the younger generation, you know? And by the grace of God, it's going to happen. And we just want to bless our people, you know? And the acknowledgement would, I'm hoping, would make our younger generation stronger, meaning not physically, but stronger with the attitude that, hey, you did this once, you're not going to do it again. You know, especially when Senator Talai fought for the Asian Islands for Guam, and he said, oh, that never happened. No, it did happen. And so we need people to stand up. Look at what's happening with the burn pits. You know, we had to take it to court. You know, so that generation, that's where it was an initial, we initiated something that a lot of generations say, hey, don't do that, you know, that was the mentality back then when I started this. Because a lot of people wouldn't believe, hey, wow, they'll do that to you. We, you know, that's what was told to me. Said, the US wouldn't do that to us. And I said, well, they did. I'm sorry. And so to the younger generation, don't get bamboozled anymore. You know, you guys, once you find out the truth and the facts, stand up for your rights. That's what we're doing. And we're doing it in a way where, you know, that we get the acknowledgement. I mean, it's not a us against them or that kind of friction. It's bringing the truth to the forefront and saying, this is what needs to be done. This is what Congress needs to do. And so if the younger generation will get then I call it intestinal fortitude, you know, guts. If you get the guts to stand up, because a lot of people, you know, even when came back in 2023, and that happened to me, you know, I mean, look what a lot of people, yeah, I'm going to say the truth, you know, because people say, look what happened to Angel, look what happened to Pangolina, look what happened to Dr. Look at, and so why am I still alive? That's what some people are saying. Why is he still alive? So I said, it's by the grace of God, you know. And so we know what happens sometimes, but don't be afraid. That's what I tell people. Don't be afraid, but be wise. You know, don't be afraid, but be wise. And don't be too confrontational sometimes, but always stand in the gap. So that's all we're doing right now. We're just standing in the gap. It's up to our leaders now. Yeah. And I give a lot of kudos to Senator Teresa Lai. She has always been there for us from the beginning. She was with me in Washington, D.C. testifying. She's been great. And I want to thank our members. It's been a long road. It gets frustrating for them too. And could you imagine? You know, I imagine that they said, "Wow, how long is it going to take?" And especially if you see your other members passing away, it's hard. But you know, it's stuff like this right now. You know, to help the younger generation to move up. Be strong. You know, mga mamaw Tiperel on this. Hey, Kohaja, you know, that's the way he spoke to us back then, you know, Kohaja, you know, Polu, you know. And that was the mentality. It's until some, you know, Polu and si Zeus Latin,
Ungen.
You know, si Jules lamon yung polo sokta. And then, yeah, sokta na isa la, man mamatay todo, you know, yung family mo, you know, sige, ata na, you know, I said, okay. So, they have to talk, you know, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Ungen sila. No, ungen. Si Zeus masinay pudi, ifinobong pudi, sinangan mo pudi, finatop mo para na episode Fanachu, ungen za ginin todo sami, todos ni umeega, za umeekungok, in gefagredesi todo ibidan mimizugi pars na
Just
pudesti, ungen pudesti na kinalamten. Za para hamzu todos ni umega, para umeekungok, ifinapuesti na episode Fanachu, adios, ki, otro